Natural cut ribeye, or try our tender pork porterhouse for just $14.99. Get in for wood-fired grilled favourites, only at Outback.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Willie Lawson Show here on Blog Talk Radio, the Wacko Network, and Pundit Press Radio. This is conservative talk for those who want to increase their conservative IQ. All right, welcome to the Willie Lawson Show here on Blog Talk Radio. It is going to be an interesting day. We've got my friend, U.S. Congressman Dennis Ross from the 15th Congressional District, Florida, on the show today to talk about the impending bill that's going to be signed having to do with the funding of DHS. There has been some talk in Republican circles about giving the Democrats a clean bill, and we talked about what a clean bill was. We talked about a clean bill is a bill that is voted on as is, with no amendments, no additions or deletions. However, I don't think that's the best plan, especially because the president, although he says that he is the guy that wants to be reach across the aisle and I'll work with Republicans. Except that he doesn't. Except that he has no intentions on working with Republicans, and except that it seems like after the veto of the authorization for the Keystone XL pipeline, it doesn't look like he's willing to work with people in his own party that may have a different viewpoint than him. It is, you know what, and I mentioned this on our take-home edition last night, that this president is exactly what Mark Levin calls him. He is an imperial president. Forget that he's not going to work with Republicans. He's not going to work with people of his own party who disagree with him. He's not listening to the people that most presidents normally listen to. They normally get a feel for a constituency anyway through the people who are in their own party. And this president is not even interested in doing that, obviously. So I think we should look strongly at finding ways to make sure that this president's initiatives cannot, under any circumstances, come to fruition. I will take a break now, but we have limited time because our friend Congressman Ross is much in demand today. So go ahead. I'll go ahead and press the button and see if I don't bring the internet down. Oh, I didn't. Fabulous. Well, sometimes I think I pressed that button and the whole internet shut down. So I didn't do it.
We're watching you, Willie. We're watching you.
I know. I did tell me about it. I know. On our Newsmaker line is my good friend and a fantastic asset to the Central Florida area and the country in general is Congressman Dennis Ross from the 15th Congressional District of Florida. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning. How you doing, Willie?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really good. Listen, I know that we have limited time because everybody wants to talk to you, and I can't imagine why they wouldn't. Today, this week is a chance to see if the new Congress lives up to the hype, frankly, out here. Here's a time that the authorization for the Department of Homeland Security vote is coming up, and it seems like there's a contention out here where we are out here that says that you can fund Homeland Security, but you can't fund the president's executive action initiative on immigration. How do you see all that coming down, especially against the landscape of his veto of the pipeline yesterday?
Yeah, and Willie, this is where we have to be very careful in managing expectations. We're fortunate that we do have a very strong majority in the House and we do have a majority in the Senate, but we don't have 60 votes, which is why the Senate has not been able to pass the bill we passed over there to them that would fund the Department of Homeland Security, in fact, increase the amounts that were necessary for Customs and Border Protection, for the Coast Guard, but it would also restrict and not allow any funds to be used to carry out the President's executive orders. That has been voted on 4 times to be brought to the floor for consideration in the Senate, and all 4 times it has failed. Since then, now we've got Harry Reid saying, well, we're not going to let anything happen. Look, midnight on Friday, funding for the Department of Homeland Security runs out. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, let it happen. 80% of the employees got to show up for work anyway. Granted, they don't get paid. My concern, and the concern of all of us, should be that we have a constitutional obligation to provide for the common defense, including protecting the security of this nation. I don't want to see a government shutdown, but I also know that we have been correct in our assessment that the President's actions by his executive order with regard to amnesty are illegal and unconstitutional. The district court in federal district court in Texas agreed with us. I believe that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta will agree with us. Things are looking good that way, but we have to be very concerned about what's going to happen if we don't have Homeland Security. This president is crazy enough to have an anecdotal event that's going to just backlash on the Republicans if something happens, whether it be an attack, whether it be a crisis or whatever, come Saturday or Sunday if there's no funding for DHS. Now, having said that, Willie, this is what I expect is going to happen. We had a Republican conference this morning in the House where the Republicans got together and said, look, we've done all we can at this point. The Senate has to act. They must act. I believe that the Senate will probably act on Friday and send a clean funding bill over to the House to fund the Department of Homeland Security. They will probably then leave for the weekend. And that will put the onus on us in the House to decide whether we're going to take it or whether we're going to not take it. And I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can just tell you that I think that's going to be the process that's followed. And we have to weigh, quite frankly, whether we put this country at greater risk by not funding DHS. I think that's our number one concern. So we'll see what happens. It's quite a time here in D.C. as it has been here for the last 6 years under this president.
I understand the position that you're in because I went to school during the part of time that they actually taught civics, and we just don't. You know what? The numbers have improved, in the Senate, and they're strong in the House, but they're not quite big enough to override a veto. And if you know that it's going to be vetoed anyway. I don't know what the symbolic exercise is to go ahead and push something through, knowing full well that it's going to be DOA.
Well, not only is it going to be DOA, but what's going to happen is that the funding isn't there for this very necessary agency. Willie, you hit on something so very strong and so very correct, and that's about understanding the process. If we're going to have a Republican or president in 2016, we have to show the American people that Congress, under Republican control, can legislate and provide solution-oriented legislation to the president. The president then has to either veto or sign it into law. But if we're not putting legislation on his desk, he's going to stand back and say Republicans cannot control, they cannot govern, therefore they shouldn't have a president. And we've got to understand that we've got to give a little to get something in return. It's not going to be everything we want. But I'd rather have half of what we want than none of what we want and put it on the president's desk and let him veto it, let him account to the American public, and then we can build a pattern of showing that we're solution-oriented, that we're willing to get this done, but if you give us a Republican president, we're going to change the course of this country for the better, and this is how we're going to legislate.
Well, how do you convince people that because we got a lot of people who are very, very passionate out here. How do you convince folks that it is so important if we continue to say that we are pro-Constitution people, that that the Constitution lays out a process of things that we have to go by this process that the Constitution has already laid out for us, and maybe one of the best ways to go. One of the best ways to go strategically is to continue to put the legislation on the president's desk, make him say yay or nay, just like the Constitution, and that doesn't really let him get out of that and get out on his own tangent. because there's enough legislation about most of these topics that he could have said yes or no to all along. How do we get that? Again, I didn't graduate first in my class, but I get that. How do we turn that I just said into a message that the rank and file Republicans and conservatives can understand and support you guys with?
And that's a very difficult thing to message in a very brief period of time. But let me just put it this way to you. We have created, by our founding fathers, a system of checks and balances. And, yes, the president can use his veto pen, and we can override the veto. But if we can't override the veto and he's doing things that are unconstitutional or illegal, we still have the recourse of the courts. And to be quite frank with you, when it comes to executive orders, the courts have been with us just about every time in ruling that what the president has done is unconstitutional. We have a system of government that mankind has never seen before that actually works. Is it cumbersome? Yes. Is it time-consuming? Yes. And it's even more frustrating. But it works, and we have to be patient. We can't have everything because this is the cycle. We pass something, the president vetoes it. We pass something, the president vetoes it. Pass something, the president vetoes it. Ultimately, if the president starts acting on his own in defiance of what the legislature's demanding that he do, then that has a recourse in the courts, and we have to rely on the courts to do the right thing and find that the president is acting unconstitutionally. It's a very complicated and convoluted process, but it has worked for 239 years. And I continue to believe it's going to work again no matter how far this president takes his authority way out of bounds and over and above what he has been authorized to do under the Constitution.
That's exactly right. You know what? I know that you're expected to speak at 1:30, so I've got one quick question.
Yes, sir.
The president said during the State of the Union address, and I'll tell you, Congressman Ross, this is the first State of the Union address from the president that I watched from front to back without leaving the room.
Wow. Wow.
This is the first one. This is the first one I got to without leaving the room. Yeah. It took a lot. You ought to be. I know that now that my heart health is better too because I was able to survive it. So
I like that.
He said that I remember him saying that our energy policy should be more than just one pipeline. So my immediate response in my living room was like, "Hey, can we just start with one pipeline then? Can we start somewhere?" That seems a reasonable viewpoint. Now, how do we move forward now that the president has actually moved away not only from Republicans but from some of the people in his own party and gone out on his own with this?
And what you'll see happen over the next 23 months is more and more people from his party move away from him because he becomes more and more of a liability as he relies on what his legacy is going to be without regard to the good of the country. And so, there will be a vote, I believe, in the Senate to see if they can get two-thirds to override his veto. If they can, which would surprise me if they did, then it will come to the House, and we'll have to get two-thirds. It would be phenomenal if we could get two-thirds of both chambers and override his veto. But I think you'll see that this president is so ideologically intransigent that he's going to do what he wants to do without regard to his party, without regard to his country. And I think this is the beginning of a pattern that we're going to see happen for the next 23 months.
No doubt. Actually, and I just thought about what you were saying is this may not be the worst thing that ever happened. This may be the beginning of actually slowing him down or him isolating himself in a way that he can be completely ineffective. And that's what we want.
Watch just on a quick note here, but watch what happens with the Iran nuclear capability negotiations. A lot of members of his party don't want him to do this. And have filed legislation. Democrats have filed legislation to stop it and to put increased sanctions on Iran. He is dividing his own party now. I mean, he's already divided the country. Now he's dividing his own party. So he becomes an island here in the next couple of months, and I think whatever credibility he has will wane significantly.
Well, and we can all look forward to that smiling. All right, I know you got to get out of here. Listen, Dennis, thank you ever so much for coming by.
Likewise, Willie. Anytime.
It's always cool.
Thank you for allowing me to do this.
I will take you up on that. All right. Have a fantastic rest of the day, and we will talk to you. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it. Thank you.
God bless now.